Hey, everyone. I'm happy that you came back to listen to the SBP Podcast Mobile Filmmaking. I'm Susie Botello. I'm your host, and you are listening to episode 93. So I'm going to share a secret with you, but this is not my secret. This is a secret that has been held on to for a number of years. Our guest is Michael Harlow, and he is from San Diego. He shoots travel videos using iPhones. But way back, before our inaugural International Mobile Film Festival here in San Diego, I think it was probably around 2011, Michael gave me a call. We set up a phone call because he reached out to me as the mobile filmmaking guru in San Diego. And he reached out to me and shared this incredible story. Now, he did warn me before he shared it with me that I was not to share this because this was a big secret and no one knew about it. And he wanted to keep it that way for a reason, which we'll share in this podcast. And so I am really excited to share our guests. We recorded this the other evening, and I am telling you that the vibe and the energy of what we're going to share with you was alive and kicking at the time that we were recording it. Just even though I had heard this story now for the second time from him, it was still really exciting. But I wanted to share it with all of you because it's a big part of how I met Michael Harlow. And because I think you'll get a kick out of it. And who knows, one of you, someone out there, may be able to take part in this little bit of an adventure. But let's go there now and let's talk to Michael and Melissa. Hey everyone, welcome back to the SBP Podcast. I am here with a couple of really cool friends from San Diego. They are the Adventure Travelers. They are famous for that. They are Michael Harlow and Melissa. Hi guys.
Hey, how's it going? Good to hear from you, Susie.
Great to hear from you. Now, Michael and Melissa, I met before our very first film festival here in San Diego. And there's a mysterious part of the story with this that we're going to save for a little bit. Just to keep you guys hanging. It's a really neat story from Michael. And it has something to do, it's almost like a modern day pirate story. Would you say, Michael?
Yeah, pretty much. It's filled with intrigue.
Yes. But Melissa does voiceovers as well. So I wanted to talk to her, but their adventure travels, just so you all know, they shoot 95% at the least with, is it an iPhone?
iPhone 11, yep. And we've
iPhone
gone
11
all the way
now.
from like an iPhone 4 all the way to the 11.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you guys really do have a lot of really cool adventures. But let's talk to Melissa first, because I'm really intrigued by her work in we are in a podcast, but this is not a voiceover. Melissa, how did you get started, and was this how did you find your career in doing that?
Well, when Michael decided that it was time for us to fly the nest and go on his adventure, and I say his adventure because I promised him I would when I married him, but we had to quit our corporate jobs, and I was always in healthcare. And so when we came back after 2 years of travel, which was sailing across the Pacific and on our sailboat, and then we sold that and bought an RV, traveled around the country. While we were traveling, I heard a podcast, and it's called the RV Entrepreneur, that we listen to all the time, which was great. It's this young couple that lives on the road, and they talk about all the different things that they do to be able to make money on the road, and how they deal with internet connections and meeting people and trying to do business, but yet still trying to live that free and simple life. And so they had this guest speaker, Carrie Olson, and she is a voiceover professional. And she was saying that she started when her and her husband were in their RV traveling. And so I thought to myself, okay, you know what? I think I might be able to do that, because I've done a lot of speaking in my career, and I don't want to go back to the corporate world. After you've traveled for 2 years, you're a different person, And
True.
so I thought, I think I can do that. So I just started doing all the research, and there's a ton of, equipment and technical stuff you have to know, along with your, performance. I didn't know anything. I did not know anything. And I'm telling you, I didn't know what a sound wave was or anything. So after all the research, I just started. I just did it. I wasn't afraid to fail, because, hey, I'll just move on to the next thing if this doesn't work. But I was determined to do it because Mike and I want to still travel. We want to still film our little travel documentaries, and we want to be free to pick up and go when we want to. In a traditional job, just you can't do that. So it literally could be a whole different, interview, but I have been successful, and I've done sort of a non-traditional way of voiceover, and it's all online, and it's through different platforms online. And I just, I plunged in, and I don't know, I make enough money for us to live and continue to be simple.
What kind of projects do you do voiceovers for?
I just did a podcast intro just a day or so ago. I do everything, literally. I'm not too much into characters, but I do characters. I'll play a doctor, or I'll play a snarky teenager.
Well, you did a whole book on tape, too.
I did a whole audio book on tape called
Wow.
A cow,
a mule, a cow, and 5 jugs of shine.
4 jugs.
Wait,
I don't know.
What?
Yeah.
So when you did a mule and a cow, are you literally trying to sound like a mule or a cow, or is this kind of like a...
This is a true story about a young girl who lived in Tennessee, and she ended up being sold by her father for a mule, a cow, and 5 jugs of shine. And so it's her story. And because she's from Tennessee, and I do have that little hillbilly accent down in me, because that's where I grew up.
Hey, I have to tell you, this is the people all over the world are listening to this. Let's make sure they understand what shine is.
Okay, shine is homemade liquor.
Yeah.
Yeah, homemade liquor. And so, that's the story of that. But I was able to use my own accent. I just threw it in there in the audition, and they liked it. And that's the thing about finding your voice. You just throw it out there, and you just be yourself. And so I do e-learning. I've done, lots of commercials. radio, YouTube advertisements, corporate narrations, meditation, just a lot of things.
Yeah.
Everything. I'll do anything except porn.
That's kind of like in our film festival where people ask, what kind of, I'm like, anything except porn. That's wonderful. Do there is a difference between just, narration, like you were just talking about, because that's a little more, we're going into the videos, documentaries, and also in movies. Have you done any narration in any films or documentaries that kind of stand out?
Well, just my own personal. I've done little short documentary types of, films, but nothing that would be considered, of broadcast or whatever on Netflix or, the History Channel or anything like that. But I try to, my influence has always been telling a story. And so for me, when we do our travel videos, that's what I'm doing. I'm telling a story with my voice, and that's kind of what I feel is important. So, and I'm also the brand spokesperson for a YouTube channel called Thought Temple, and it's inspirational, and they do meditation, and my goodness, we've done a project like once a week since 2018. Wow. Yeah. And so it's a learning curve. It's a definite learning curve.
Yeah, I remember when I was in video production and we did a lot of videos, and you do the A and B, the two-side script, but there's also a column in the middle for the timing, for the minutes that are rolling, because you're writing the script. Sometimes you are planning that, and you have to know how much. When you're doing B-roll, right, on the video end, you want the narration, and you have to time that according to the video. And sometimes it works, one way, right, where you're timing the narration to the B-roll. And sometimes the B-roll is more like a filler for the narration. So either way on that, it's something that you probably have encountered where someone's telling you need to pace this little paragraph to be this time, to fit this time slot.
I was just talking to Michael about this today, because you'll get someone who, is a novice at putting visuals together, or a documentary, or whatever it is. And they'll say, okay, here's the script, and the actual visual footage is, let's say, 2 minutes long or 3 minutes long, but the narration is 10 minutes long. So, part of it's an education too about with your client to help them understand what and how it all works. So it's about 150 words for 1 minute of narration. So that's how you can gauge it. So if it's a 3 minute video, then you just do the math, and that's how many words it's going to be. So a lot of it is just educating people about the timing, because you can't fit 10 minutes of narration into 2 minutes. I will tell them, no, I cannot do that. It's not possible. It's not.
Not unless you put it on speed.
Yeah, and then I'll sound like a robot. Nobody wants that.
Right.
Yeah. But when we were traveling, and I was doing the voiceovers for our little documentaries on the iPhone, that's all I had. I would literally go into the back of the RV, pull open my closet, stuff my head into the closet, and with my iPhone, I would narrate the entire video. But you can edit your narration. You can put text on your video to make sure that you're saying the right thing, and then you go back and you delete the text, so it's not on the film. And it was a wonderful way to begin to learn how to mix your voice and the visuals and the music and all of that.
Yeah, because it's almost you're practically choreographing your voice performance to the visuals.
Yes, and along with that, I did a little storyboard for each little video I did because it's a little bit hard to just go willy-nilly. To make a good story, as you know, it takes just a little bit of planning, but a storyboard can be a one-pager. What do you want to tell? What's the basic story? What do you want people to hear or learn? And then, what's the beginning going to be? What's the meat of it? And then how are you going to end it? And then what's the music going to take you through? And how can your voice make what you're seeing on the screen just come alive or make you cry or, make you feel something you haven't felt.
Yeah, I mean the audio is half the picture, but it's also probably more, well, it really is. The quality of the audio is very, very important, more so than the video. But it also sets the tone for your story.
Absolutely.
So that's interesting. Did you so after I met you guys after that first film festival, I spent hours and days going into forums and things like that, looking for how can I attach my professional XLR microphone into my iPhone. And finally, lo and behold, I found the iRig. And I'm wondering if you found that helpful, or if you use anything like that to attach a professional microphone, or if you're just, because now the quality of just recording, I edited a video for a friend, and I told him, I said, just record it with your iPhone, use the memo app, and just make sure that you're close enough to, to the microphone on your phone to do it. And I brought it into, my video editor, and it sounded great. It sounded like, he was in a quiet place and all that, but it sounded great.
Well, Mike and I, we like to learn from our mistakes. And
don't we
our
all?
total flub ups and screw ups. And so when we were, gung ho and filming all the things that we were documenting them, of course, we didn't realize the wind, and the cranes in the background and all of that. But what we did learn how to do on the iPhone was to separate the audio, detach the audio, and use that little snippet of your voice for something else that's not going to be so distracting. And you can, cut off some of the wind noise, or, detach the audio altogether and just use music over it. So, like you, if there's a part that just is a total flop, well, but the visual's good, or the audio is good, but the visual is a flop, it's blurry, or it's, just not what you wanted, but for whatever reason, when we were narrating it, it sounds amazing, and it was just what we wanted to say. So you can use your little bits and pieces and just try to move them around and being creative. And that's part of, just being the editor.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, content is content, and little pieces. I mean, a story is a puzzle, right?
Yes. Yes.
I want to talk to Michael now. Hi, Michael.
Hello. I like
we were going to get to you.
I like listening to my
We're
wife
very
talk
competitive,
anyway.
by the way, so he cannot have more time than me.
Oh, no. Well, I do want Michael, listeners, the story that Michael is going to share, I feel like okay, it's Lord of the Rings. But the story that Michael is going to share really is pretty intriguing. And there is a catch to this, and that is part of the mystery. And I'll let Michael share how you're going to hear about something that not many people know about. Right, Michael?
That's right. Yeah. I might even
And I
get
know
away
that
with
when you
that.
told me, you practically had me sign a non-disclosure. No, you didn't, but but you trusted my integrity and not sharing it with anybody. And of course, I didn't.
Correct.
This is part of why I'm so excited that now that I get to share it, you're gonna share it to the audience publicly.
Okay. All right. Well, it's all about a scuba diving story. I'm a scuba dive master, and I love wreck diving. And I got the opportunity to go to the South Pacific and do some amazing wreck dives. So on the first wreck dive, well, it wasn't the first one, but it was a wreck dive. I went down to about 80 feet, and on the side of this ship that was sunken underneath the water, there was a huge torpedo hole in the side of the ship. And the torpedo hole was about, I don't know, 20 feet in diameter. And I swam through that, and I had a partner and another dive master with me. And we were scouting around, and we're looking at, the interior of the ship. And it was really nice and everything. And on the way out, the dive master went out the hole first, and then my partner went out second. And then when I came out, I looked up and to the left, and I saw this kind of shimmer, something kind of, grabbed my eye. So,
Because it was really dark,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it was really dark, but it was like there was this weird shimmer to it. So I went over to where it was, and I was still at about 120 feet to 80 feet, somewhere in that area. And I started to, use my BCD, my buoyancy compensator device, to lift me up a little bit. And I had my hand up above my head, just so I didn't hit my hand on anything. And then I kept going, and I kept going, and I didn't understand what was going on. And all of a sudden, it went totally black, like in an instant. It went completely black. But I was still going through liquid, and I didn't understand what was going on. And I reached.
Was that scary? Did you at any point there think I could get myself into some serious trouble here?
Oh, big time, big time. I still didn't understand what was going on. So finally, I came to a surface, and you can feel yourself, get heavy again, because I was no longer underwater. I was sitting above the water, and I'm still 80 feet below the water. So I didn't understand what was going on. So I had a dive light on, and I, turned my dive light on, and I started looking around, and my dive light went out, but it was on. So I didn't understand again. And I lifted my dive light up, and I was looking at my dive light, and there was all this black goo on my dive light. And somehow my hand just, went down again like natural, and my light went out again. And I picked it back up, and I started realizing that I was in like 2 or 3 feet of oil. So what happened is the oil came from the sunken ship, went up into this little hole, and then started filling the hole up with oil. So you had water below, 2 or 3 feet of oil, and then this empty air chamber. So I had my mask on and my regulator in my mouth, and I definitely wanted to ensure that I kept my regulator in, and I didn't want to breathe any of this, toxic air. So I had my wits about me. I kind of understood what was going on at this point, that I was in oil. And so I took my dive light, and I started looking around inside this little area. And it was probably one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life.
Sorry, guys. Before you go there, now you're completely alone.
I'm totally alone. Yeah, the dive master.
And nobody saw you go into this thing. So as far as they, if they turned around, they're like, hey, where did Michael go?
They wouldn't know.
Right?
They wouldn't know where I was at all. Nope. I mean,
and you had looked
saw
at
my feet hanging down, because, the bottom part of my body was still, probably visible. Yeah. But I was.
But this is while you were going down. Now that you're all the way down and everything, then were you checking? I mean, did you have enough oxygen, air? Yeah,
I had plenty of air for this thing, and I wasn't going to, like I said, I knew at any time I could just, let the air out of my BC and go down. So it wasn't. I wasn't afraid really for my life or anything, but it was such a different element I've never seen before or felt or anything like that. So it was completely
Right.
foreign to me, but at the same time, I don't know, it was just a trip.
Yeah. Okay. So now you get to this place and it's still completely dark,
Totally
right?
dark. If I didn't have my flashlight, I would have been hosed. Yeah.
And could you feel now this place was filled with water, or were you still in submerged in water once you finally got through all the schmuck?
So yeah, the water's down below, and then I'm in about, let's say, 2 feet of oil. So, from my
Yeah.
chest up to from my belly up to my chest is all oil. So, and anything below that is salt water. So anything
Wow.
above my chest is all air, and it's like this toxic oil filled air that's been there for 50 years. So,
Wow.
it was just really freaky.
Yeah. So okay, thank you listeners for bearing with me. Now you can continue.
Okay, well, that's good because I calmed down a little bit. I was getting a little freaked out.
I still get panic attacks when he talks about this story.
Well, I mean, for most of
Uh-huh.
us, right?
Yep.
We're thinking it's like going to a long road in the middle of the desert with like half a gas tank, and you're thinking, well, I still got to get out of here,
Mhm.
Right, right.
and I'm going into this void. I don't know where the destination, where this is leading me to,
Right.
and it is underwater.
Well, yeah, and like I said, I'm still 80 feet underwater, so
Yeah,
it's not like I could just hold my breath and swim out and swim all the way to the top. I mean, I still had
exactly.
to exit the ship and go up another 80 feet, and that's a long breath hold.
It's that same sensation that when you watch movies from people in outer space.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going, they're out there so far, and you think, when they go outside and their line gets cut and they're just floating out there in the middle of
Right.
nowhere in space, and you almost take a gasp of air. You're like, oh my god, like, and it's that
It
same
felt
kind of
just like
feeling when
space.
you're, yeah, it kind of does, because once you're underwater, especially very deep, right? What you see below you is nothing until you reach it.
Right. Exactly.
So, wow. Okay, so now that you're calmed down,
Okay.
if I haven't freaked you out more.
No, it's fine. So now I got my bearings straight and everything, and I'm like, okay, this is a trip. This is something totally foreign to me, but I want to check it out. So I turn my flashlight around in my hand and I start looking around this void, and everywhere I looked, I mean, every square inch of this, I was probably in a 3 foot high by about 10 foot by 3 foot long room underwater, and in every square inch of this room were these crystals, and the crystals were like this, when you see oil and it has that weird shimmer shine to it, it has all these different colors and stuff. Everyone
Like the rainbow
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Every one of these crystals had that shimmer and just this weird uh glow to it, and I'm just like, I was just like freaking out. I'm like, wow, this is so different. I've scuba dived all around the world, and this was the most impressive, crazy thing I've ever seen in my life. So as I was shining my light around, I see this big hole behind me, and I swim over to the hole, and I look, and it's probably about 2 feet higher than where I'm at, but I could look inside the hole, and there was this giant cargo hold that was probably 40 feet high by 80 feet to 100 feet long. And every square inch of that cargo hold was also filled with these crystals. So these crystals were literally everywhere that there was air in there. And I was just like, holy, I want to say other words, but
Right.
holy smokes, this is just absolutely crazy. So knowing that I'm in a toxic environment that is full of oil, and uh, anything could,
Pressure.
a spark could, totally ignite this whole
Oof.
entire place, and it would blow up in a second. I wouldn't even know I was dead. So, but I wanted to get one of these crystals so bad, so I'm trying to, break off one of these crystals with my hand, and I couldn't use my flashlight, because I didn't want to, create any spark or anything. And, but I couldn't budge one of these crystals. And I thought, maybe, salt creates crystals and stuff like that. But it was such a hard crystal that I couldn't break one off.
So was the texture of the crystal, was it spiky, rocky,
spikes
or
everywhere. Yeah, everywhere.
Wow.
So what I wanted to do later on, and we can get to this, but I wanted to go back, and I wanted to take my camera, my iPhone camera, and other cameras, of course, to document this. And you could talk to me about the iPhone technology I'm almost done. So anyway, the spikes were everywhere. So they're on the floor, they're on the ceiling, they're on the walls. It's everywhere. So these crystals are, just, they would tear you up if you tried to walk around inside there. So when I thought about it afterwards, I had to formulate an entire plan of how I was going to go back and be able to film these crystals, because it's a really difficult task. You have to work with the depth. You have to work with the oil, getting oil on your camera, and then how do you get the oil off your camera once you get into the hole. Just all sorts of different things. And then to be able to get out and climb up and walk across that big giant void and, explore that even further. Will you fall through the floor? Are these crystals, firm enough that they're going to hold your weight? Just all sorts of different things.
Now, this was, Michael, part of the wreck that you feel was undiscovered. Like it looks like there had been nobody there ever.
Never. And so far as I know, there's never been anybody back, because I constantly Google it and try to find out if anybody's ever discovered it again. And I've had some diver friends go back there, but they haven't gone into that hole. So as far as I know, it's still undiscovered.
Well, there's a lot of people. My dad was a scuba diver, and he actually even at some point, I think he wrote like some book on this stuff. But around the house were things like shredded cannonballs from pirate ships and things. I mean, I was like, what is this? Or some very like a door handle from a ship.
Wow. That's
awesome. From like, I mean, all these things. And he went to Japan, he went to Greece, which I remember he said that was like heaven for him.
Oh, yeah.
And when we were in Italy, there, I lived there. So with, my family at the time, and I was just a teenager. I was like 13 or 14, and he'd leave me on this rubber, those rafts,
right?
A dinghy, like a dinghy thing.
Kind of, yeah. And he'd left me there. I mean, in Italy, actually, one time there was a jellyfish that was bigger than that thing.
Oh, wow.
And I went to dive in, and I noticed this jellyfish just surrounded this thing, and I was like, because my imagination went with me, and I thought it's going to swallow me. It's like a hand, right? And you're in the middle of the hand, and I didn't want to jump in now.
No way.
In the water. But I kind of freaked me out, and then he and his friend came out, and this was probably illegal, but on the cliff above, people were throwing coins, like making wishes and throwing coins forever.
Right.
We're talking about a country that is thousands, and he came up with all these coins from all over the world from different times and everything, a bag full of them that they collected. I mean, there were just all these things. But I know that there are people out there who make a living hunting for treasures, like pirates.
Oh, yeah.
Through diving spots. And now you don't just go looking for a paper map, right? Because you have coordinates and things like that. But how does that work with Google? Because I know you just mentioned Google, right?
Right.
how does that work with Google with marking? Do you just go on, I haven't tried this, but you just go on Google Maps and hit the ocean with it, and say, are there markers that people leave there,
Well,
or how does that work?
if it's treasure, they're not going to leave it on Google Maps. They're going to hold that all to themselves. But yeah, I mean, we use latitude and longitude coordinates all the time, but I have no idea.
Well, like, okay, we found this there's between this old boat that everybody knows about and this old sunken bicycle.
Oh, right.
Somebody threw in the ocean. Yeah,
I got you.
I would imagine that there are little markers of that sort somewhere.
Right, and even that ship that I dove on, I'm sure has marker on it, because it's basically a World War II graveyard where I dove, and there's ships all over the place, and there were actual skeletons. There were bones on the ship. When I first went down, I found a jawbone, from somebody that perished on the boat. There were bombs on there. There were tanks. There were all sorts of different things. So yeah.
And so I know when you called me, I'm like all on the edge of my chair. When you called me, part of your reasoning for even talking to me was, well, you were talking about, how you could damage cameras. And so, if you could film it on a phone, you could put a phone into that kind of a risk without, killing your wallet.
Right, exactly. And one of the big things was when I couldn't get a piece of this, one of the crystals, it really was to my detriment, because when I came back and I was back in society in the United States, I contacted a whole bunch of, scholars and, wreck divers and just basically anybody and everybody, from petroleum companies to everybody. And I said, I found this, and I gave them the story, and I have been published and stuff, but, how can I get funding, or, do you know anybody that will fund me to go back there and do this? Cause it's in the middle of the South Pacific. And, everybody came back to the same conclusion, that they said, unless you have a piece of that crystal, nobody's going to fund your trip, So it was a real shame that since I didn't have any physical evidence, that it was really hard to go back there. So laying on your thing, if I did go back and it was because I would be on my own dime, I was trying to find the cheapest, most economical way to do it. And like you said, without breaking the bank, and also the whole thing is how do you get an expensive or inexpensive camera through the goo of, oil, and then unpackage it and then have it, good enough to where you can actually use it and not have, oil slick all over your phone or your camera gear. So, yeah.
Well, and that has to do with the casing, obviously, but the ability for a phone to go so far up in altitude, or so far down below, right? Below 0 degrees, that's also a risk, just like it is for humans. Also, it can damage equipment.
Right. Yeah. And when I first talked to you, and probably even to this date, the iPhone cases or any phone case can't withstand the pressure of going down, because you have to go at least 100 feet to get into the rack, and then you go up another 20 back to 80 feet. So yeah, it's quite a bit of pressure on a phone or on a casing. So I don't think they have anything to this date that's gonna make that.
Well, we need to speak to Tim from Apple.
Come on, Tim.
It's like the Nest. I mean, okay. Yeah, there's so many companies out there now making things for phones, and I think I'm hoping that through your story in this podcast that there's a lot of people making, just with the lenses, right?
Right.
With the anamorphic lenses and things like that, what they can do. But this could be another, opportunity. And, for any company, you have to mention profit.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of scuba divers out there that would love to be able to go deeper and document things. What kind of cases? So for regular cameras, right,
Uh-huh.
they have cases that can go pretty deep.
Right.
I know they're super expensive. But if they can use that same technology, right, or if there's someone that can loan you one, anybody that's listening, that could loan you one or could, agree to go down there with you, signing a consent.
Sure.
Then maybe there's a way to fit the phone into one of these bigger casings.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a workaround somehow, some way that we can do that. It's just actually it's been so long since I've dove that wreck that I'm kind of
Well, what are you doing tomorrow?
let's go. So if there's
We just got to
sponsors out
keep the
there,
social distancing.
if you want to sponsor us.
I'll do the voiceover.
There you go. Yeah, that would be just, such a fascinating documentary.
It would be amazing.
Totally.
Yeah, it would blow people's minds, And
Where do you think that? I mean, do you think that's something natural that forms from oil? I mean, or
well, from all the people that I've talked to, there is a few different hypotheses, but most of what they were trying to allude to is that it's a salt-based crystal. It could be, but it's such an unknown. I mean, without having that actual crystal in my hand and without it having it being tested, I don't know. But it's just it was such a unusual thing to see. I don't know. It was crazy.
we definitely got to get you out there with an iPhone or something.
Totally. Well, I
Yeah,
need like
I
a little
mean,
drill too, so I can cut that thing. So I can,
well, see, now I won't be by you when you're using a drill with the sparks.
exactly.
I'm sorry. That's where.
Yeah. Even I'm afraid of that
But
one.
yeah, well, there are robots too.
Exactly.
Maybe the robot, but I wouldn't want you to listen to me here. I'm all taking ownership of this whole thing already. Wouldn't want you to blow up the scene.
No, not at all. No, not at all. And there's so many cool things on that wreck that I wouldn't want to blow it up for just historical value as well. But
Yeah. How does someone? So there was a marker for this ship, obviously, and we're not, guys. I mean, if you're thinking that we're going to give out the location, you might as well just turn this off right now. Only you know it. And now I'm thinking like a movie like the National Treasure movie where you're going to be hunted. Everybody's going to want that. What do you think the value, of that? I mean, I love stories, and I think this is just one story that should be told. But what do you think the value of this could be with that story?
I don't know. What's so funny is monetarily value. I look at it as a dilithium crystal. I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan, but a dilithium crystal is basically an energy source that transports the Starship Enterprise all over the world or all over the galaxy and everything. But what I'm thinking is, this these crystals were made from a few different things. They're made from pressure, from being underwater for in that depth. They're from the oil being pressurized, and then the air, and then possibly the salt water too. So there's all these different things that are mixed together, and also there's it was a ship that carried munitions on there, so there could be gunpowder in there. I mean, it could be all sorts of different weird stuff in there. So as it's compressed and it's been there for now, it's probably 70 years. what is that? What is it? A new source of energy? Who knows? And without knowing, without getting this, I have no idea.
Here's what I think. So I know for a fact that crystals are used for frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the value in this is scientific in the way how we are going to use the technology that we already have with these crystals to create teleportation devices that we really, really need.
Sounds good to me. I like the way
the missing link.
See, there's a movie right there.
Well, that's where it all started. You were just talking about Star Trek, and remember, a lot of the technology that is used in the military began with Star Wars.
100%, yeah.
So I'm dead serious here, guys.
Let's transport.
Right? I mean, I just had a pizza today that I had to drive to get.
Oh, jeez. It should have been teleported.
Can you imagine? Well, yeah. Hey, Melissa. Talk to me about your experience and how you set up this whole travel adventure theme thing that you guys got going. How did you even get involved with that? Whose idea was that?
Well, I married into the idea. So, Michael, we met on Match.com. And one of the things he said on his profile was, if you aren't willing to sail with me around the world, don't even bother. And so he was young, hot, and I said, well, okay, I'll do that. Sure. And really not quite fully understanding what I was agreeing to. And so life went on. We had our, raised our children. They were blended. And so Mike started, forming his plans in his head. And these crystals, he discovered these before I met him. So these kinds of adventures were always in the back of his head. And so he wanted me to go with him, not just with something like this, but to get a sailboat and sail around the world. We made it about 8 months. Because it
was 10 months.
High highs and low lows, but epic, epic and life-changing for sure. But I, wasn't quite ready to dive all in, I guess, excuse the pun, but because, I'm sort of a homebody. I like my family. But if I would not have just taken the plunge, sold everything, quit our jobs, and just took the chance, I would never, ever have done any of the adventuring that we have. And, I would say that it was a promise that I made to him when I married him. So I sort of had to honor that. Dang it.
You had to, did he make you sign something? Or?
Oh, he has a way of just kind of, bending your elbow.
He's the salesman, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one of the things that's really, really interesting about your traveling adventures, I mean, so it sounds like you almost went nomad, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But in the ocean, and if you like trees or anything like that you get to really miss them. But the adventures that you have right now, do you do a lot of do you go to other countries? I mean, outside of South America, right? But do you go to other countries like in Europe or anything like that?
Well, part of why we have this lifestyle and we have no debt. We're down to one car.
Congratulations.
We have 2 cars
that's right.
in our RV.
That's right. Our other car we bought at an auction for $1,500.
It's a 4x4.
Right. But anyway, where was I going with that?
I don't know. Well, we've gone to right before COVID hit, we were in the British Virgin Islands, and we did a whole, I wouldn't say a documentary on that, but we did a video on that. We did the U.S. Virgin Islands. We've done Mexico. We've done the South Pacific. all over Mexico. I've probably been more places in Mexico than most Mexicans. I mean, I've literally gone all over Mexico. That was with business and with Melissa. So
I think our biggest, of course, epic adventure was crossing the Pacific, leaving in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and it took us 24 days to cross, just the two of us in that 37-foot sailboat, landing in the Marquesas, and just, going from island to island to deserted island. And I
Wow.
know, really, it was just such a fantasy, crazy. And, like I said, I had a fear of water, and Michael is a surfer. He's from the Coast Guard. And so for me, it was a whole different feeling of, um, I'm putting my complete and utter trust into him. He puts his trust into me. We were total equals.
right.
Because when I was on watch at, 2 a.m. in the middle of the ocean, 2,000 miles from land, it was me. I was there on the boat, and I was sailing the boat. So, he had to trust that the decisions I made were what they were supposed to be, and vice versa. So, it all goes back to, I totally trust him. I trust his judgment.
Where did do you mind if I ask you? You can say no,
Nope.
but do you mind if I ask you where the fear of water came from?
I don't know, because I grew up in San Diego. And I just have never been a strong swimmer. I wish I was. I can swim, of course,
You're a good
but
snorkeler.
yeah, I think it's just maybe not the fear of the water, but the fear of being lost at sea, and that's your demise. I think the number one fear is, I think, public speaking, but other than that, I'm okay with that one. So now I've crossed the Pacific. Okay, that's number two. But I struggled with a lot of fears of leaving my family, leaving, the children, leaving my career. I was a career person. And so, but once we traveled around the islands and, French Polynesia, we started talking about, it's time to go home. And so we sailed our boat from Hawaii back to San Diego in November, which was,
Big seas and lots of storms. It was quite quite crazy.
there were storms out in the Pacific Northwest as big as the United States. And I'm not kidding you.
Well, and we're having like super storms
Oh,
now and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. So we're glad we did it when we did it, because now the weather is so crazy.
but when we bought our boat, we bought it for, we just outright bought it. So when we came back, we sold the boat and bought an RV for, outright. So we don't owe anything. We just keep taking the same pot of money and moving it everywhere. And so that was kind of my dream, was to just take off and travel wherever the wind takes us in the United States, because there's so many places that we've never been and have not seen.
So we went around North
There's-
America for 10 months.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's I get to deal with, a lot of my friends are all over the world now, right?
Yeah.
And I've had people say, "Oh, you're in San Diego, you're in California. So, I'm going to be in Texas. So, I'll just come over for lunch one day."
Yeah,
I was like, what the
exactly.
heck? Because they're looking at it, like in Europe or something, and I'm going, dude,
Yeah.
like Texas is like, that's, I mean, yes, you can go from El Paso if you drive all day and all night, right? Or most of the night. I think it's like 16 hours or something like that, but it's not like, and it's the same thing with LA. Can I just go and come back like in a day type thing? It's like, well, the distance is not the big deal when you're talking about LA. It's the traffic,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So there's all sorts of these things, but yeah, we live, I mean, going cross country in America, right? It's such an extraordinary adventure. Even within San Diego, you guys know this. The topography out here is just crazy. I mean, you could go. I mean, I've said it on this podcast before. You go to the dunes and the mountains, and you can hit the snow, and the dunes are in the desert. I didn't mean
right.
Sound, but and then you can go to the beach, and even the cities within the county of San Diego all have different look and the types of buildings, the streets, even the sidewalks, the views, everything is just so amazing. So imagine doing that all over the country where you guys go. Are there any places that you visited that you would? To me, it's San Diego. There is no better place than San Diego. But are there any places that you would say, this is, if you're going to come to America, you definitely got to go here?
I don't know. We loved Alaska. Alaska was one of our favorite places that we've ever been, but it's a different world for different kinds of people. So, we're super outdoorsy. We love, we're hiking right next to grizzly bears and stuff. So
I was just going to say, if you got to be okay with the bears.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. There's a million, it's just like San Diego. Every place is different. Every place around the United States is so different. In Canada, we went all through Canada too. So I don't know. That's a hard one.
We took our RV to on sort of a Southwest trip. I don't know, a year or so ago. Anyway, we went through Colorado when it was snowing, and that was enough to change my mind. Honestly, San Diego is the most mild temperatures. You don't have those extreme highs and lows, and so I don't think there's anywhere in the country I would rather live.
No.
I really don't think so.
I've thought about it. I've thought about it a lot, and
but even
I always come back to San Diego.
People are different. We're so chill and have such a different vibe out here, and we're so, what's the word I'm looking for? Liberal.
Yeah, it is the vibe. It's definitely the vibe too, just between different parts of California to San Diego, where we really are more relaxed. We really don't. We're not that heavy.
Yeah, I still talk like a surfer, and I'm old.
Well, and you see people that are willing to. Even hitting 80 and they're skateboarding.
Oh yeah.
And riding bikes and just kind of cruising along on a scooter or whatever. It's a great place. I love San Diego. There's no place other than San Diego that I'd rather be. You know what I mean? I really just love it. And I've lived in different parts of San Diego, from beaches to mountains to different. I adapt easy, but I grew up in the military, moving all the time. Right. So that made me, adapt, which is great considering the world that we're living in, where if you're not able to adapt, you're just going insane. But I wanted to ask you, just before we close off here, what adventures did you experience when you were filming with an iPhone and you're out there? How many times did you run out of battery power? How do you do that?
That's a hard one, because we have backups to backups. So when we go travel, I have my iPhone, Melissa has her iPhone. We both have iPhone 11s, and then we both have battery packs. So when we're off doing whatever, and then on top of that, we're typically on a hike or doing something adventure-y, so we're running a bunch of apps in the background. So, we have to constantly stay up on that, and we just charge our phones, and we have a couple battery backups, and our backpacks get really heavy.
And we put a cell phone booster, signal booster on our RV too, and that helps when we're kind of in the back country a little bit.
And we're trying to upload videos or something. That helps a bit.
Yeah, because you're probably uploading a lot of stuff to your Instagram account, right?
I wish. My Instagram's not as popular as my YouTube, but yeah, it's still pretty good.
But the other thing too is, if you also have an iPhone, but if you also have a MacBook or an iMac, you can literally take things off of your iMac desktop and put it into your phone so you can access things that are at home on your iPhone, to make your videos better, whether it's whatever it is. So it's just the possibilities are.
You edit all your videos on your phone?
Not anymore.
Not, I would say it depends. It depends on how quick we want to get it out. The iPhone has really all the tools that I needed to get something pretty professional out, except, now I would do a more of a professional voiceover, but you can import that into obviously the phone and do it if you wanted to. But it has all the editing capabilities. Just the iMac or your MacBook have a little bit more capabilities in your iMovie, and that's what I use to edit. I don't have anything fancier than that.
I still like editing everything on my MacBook myself, as opposed to, because I have it.
Yeah.
But back when I met you guys, I would edit thing. I remember Splice
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I would put a lot of my little music from GarageBand or whatever. I would bring it into the iTunes, and then old Splice, you could just choose your audio from iTunes.
Right.
Remember iTunes?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and things like that. But yeah, I prefer a MacBook. Let me ask you, as we close off, one of each at a time, so that there's no jealousy, to give an inspiring message to our listeners who may be considering, travel videos, and we're not going to talk about scuba diving right now, but I love your story. But if we're going to throw something on our links to, your social media and things like that, so that they can contact you, because you never know who's listening. And there may be somebody out there who's interested in going in this big underworld adventure with you, Michael.
Sounds good.
Yeah. But if you had some advice, something inspiring to get people, to go off in adventures and just do it. I think one of the things that I got from the conversation with you guys is that if you want to do something, not to be afraid, right?
That's that's the number one piece of advice that I could give. And on my own voiceover website, I wrote a blog about how I quit my job and became a voiceover professional, and how it changed my life, how I did that, the step by step. And the first thing really is if you're going to live a life like we do, if you want to go adventure, if you want to do it a month at a time, 2 months at a time, 6 months at a time, or forever, you have to, this is going to sound rather, technical or practical, but stop spending money on stupid stuff. That is the biggest thing, that the challenge that people have is this lifestyle requires you to be very minimalistic and, not have bills, not have a lot of debt. And so it took us probably 5 years to work up to the place where we were ready to go and had nothing holding us back at home. No stress about we had to have a corporate job to pay for everything. We could live very meagerly and with what we needed, because we didn't need a lot. So that is really, how I explain it, is to stop spending money on stupid stuff and don't compare yourself to others, because
someone's always going to have a bigger boat, or
somebody's going to have a bigger RV or a better YouTube channel or a better video, or going to be more, making more money in voiceover or whatever, or you shouldn't be doing it this way or that way. It's your story. It's you. And who cares about anybody else? It's what is good for you in your life at this time. and you're the one that has to write it and go through it and live it and reap the consequences, whether that's good or bad. So that's it for me.
The biggest thing I would say is just go, do what you want to do, and just put one foot in front of the other. We saw a bunch of people down in Mexico that they got to Ensenada and they stopped sailing from Ensenada and they never went south. Or people got to Mazatlan and they wanted to go around the world and they never left the dock in Mazatlan. It's like, just keep going. We didn't know anything and we sailed across the Pacific. I mean, we knew enough, of course, but that didn't stop us from going. If you have a dream, follow your dream. That's in you got to keep focused that you're following a dream.
So don't get too comfortable, right?
Never. Never. Life is about change.
That's awesome. Yeah, you kind of have to embrace that, especially in the world that we live in. You got to just go for it.
Exactly.
I want to thank you guys for being in this podcast. I love the stories that you shared with our listeners, and I'm intrigued again with your story, Michael, as well.
Thanks, Susie.
All right. Say goodbye to our listeners.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. Thanks for bearing with us, and see you on the road. Woo-hoo.